What's going on, everybody? It's Childish. We're back at it again. We got ourselves the next episode of Educate and Dominate, that one-on-one interview series where we take some of the top names of the game and get their insights so we can bring your game to the next level. My next guest is coming back for that episode 4 of our mini series Operation Midgame. We got ourselves Once in Love. How are we doing today, sir?
Hello, my friend. We're a bit sick. A bit sick.
Yes. We're a bit sick, but we're still getting it done. We got to get this stuff out to these people because they can't get enough of it. I tell you what. I tell you what. I just want to give, just on behalf of both of us, a big shout out. This is the 4th episode of the 5-part miniseries, Operation Midgame. We're going to be focused on Rift of Worlds. I want to give you guys a shout out. We've had just an amazing response over the first 3 videos. We couldn't be more excited to finish off the series with these 2 next ones.
Yeah, and so guys, I mean, always feel free to leave comments in the videos if you have questions for us. I myself and Childish try to go through all the comments every day or two, a few times a day, just to see if you guys have any questions for us. Of course, you can always contact us on our streams as well when we stream. But yeah, if you guys ever have questions after the videos, please do ask. We're here to help you guys.
Definitely. So if you guys are just tuning in for the first time, welcome to the channel. Now, this is the episode 4. Like I already stated, we have 3 different episodes talking about giants, TOA, and dragons. If you haven't checked those already, definitely check those out because as you guys already know, if you've been following Once in Love for quite some time, he's a very methodical player. There is structure when it comes to this series, and so everything that we do, everything that we're at to this point is because of the line that we took it. So we have now reached the stages where we're going to be focusing on Rift of Worlds and working our way so we can get those grindstones and really improve our units' stats dramatically. First and foremost here, as always, we want to go ahead and break it down when it comes to the Rift of World boss, talking about the strategy and the concept. And so for those that are if you guys are just kind of new into the game, maybe checking us out the first time, a lot of the things that Comp to Us has done for us has really made it easier for us to like learn the fights and whatnot with regards to the different bosses. Rift of Worlds, they've done an exceptional job providing the knowledge. So if you guys want to check this out and the strategy info, you can click on here as we're going to kind of go over the skills here. So once help me out here, what's the big take on these bosses skills and the passives?
So I guess let's go over the attacking skills first. So Breath of Doom attacks all enemies, has the chance to put on 3 debuffs. You have the chance to put on Attack Rake, you have the chance to put on Attack Speed, Slow, and you have the chance to put on Oblivion. So for you guys that don't know what Oblivion is canceling passives. It silences your passives so they are inactive. If you have specific curiosities about units like Fire Monkey King where he gains stacks for his passive, what happens in that case is when he gets Oblivioned, whatever count he was at, let's say he's at 7 out of 10, it stops. And when he comes back, it will resume at the same count.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So moving on to the next skill, just to include Breath of Doom hits all of your units, frontline and backline included. So moving on to the next skill, we have Crush of Doom. Crush of Doom ignores beneficial effects, so defense breaks, shields, which include shield sets and units that give shields. This is an attack that only hits the frontline. And so it's a set amount of damage overall, and it will be split among the units that you have in the front line. So if you have 2 units, 3 units, or 4 units, if you have 4 units, all 4 units are going to take a little bit less in total because, there's 4 spreading out the damage instead of just 2 taking it. But something important here is that if you're thinking about putting a unit in the front line, you have to remember that this skill scales off how much damage or how much defense you have. So if you have a lot of defense, you're not going to take very much damage. But if you don't have any defense, you are going to take a massive amount of damage.
Right.
So moving on to Rageful Roar, this is probably one of the most important skills to understand. So in Rift, after you've taken 16 turns, the boss will interrupt you regardless of where his attack bar is and strip all of the buffs off your team and then attempt to stun you. I believe it's 3 hits that attempt to stun you. This is why resistance is a really important stat in raids. You want to try to resist this stun. Something notable, this is another reason why we bring heal block. When the boss steals your buffs, it heals according to how many buffs it's taken. If you have heal block, it doesn't heal. Something that is unavoidable with this, though, is that every single time this attack happens, the boss gains attack power, as stated here in the last line.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about how you can avoid not dying to really long rift runs going forward. But for now, we're going to continue with the skills. So total annihilation. This is kind of like a passive. So basically, every single time the boss loses 25% of its HP. So this is what we call like jumping. When the boss jumps, what happens is the boss will physically like stop the battle, jump up in the air, attack all of everyone's units, and then drop down and slam into the ground and hit everyone. So this will, it'll do a bit of damage, but the important thing to note here is that it adds an extra hit to both of the first two skills, which are the Breath of Doom and the Crush of Doom. So this happens 3 times. There's the first jump, second jump, and third jump.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. My apologies. So moving on to the next skill, Carnage. When the boss eliminates an entire team of monsters, the boss's attack speed will increase and will start attacking all of the nearby enemies. So this is what we mean by double or triple tanking. When you or one of your allies wipes, meaning all of your units die, the boss moves and starts attacking another team. It's pretty detrimental because you cannot attack bar reduce that head, only your head, as well as it has increased speed, so it's going to be debuffing you and hurting the team more often. So this is why survivability is important in raids, especially if you're looking to get Childish or someone like Shredded Puzzle to carry you in R5 for your L&D scroll.
There you go. Little hint there.
Little shout out there.
Little shout out there.
You guys,
Name drop.
pretty heavy survival teams to get carried.
That's a great point to kind of mention here real quick, even though we'll kind of jumping the spectrum as far as what we're talking about. Considering that concept, we're going to have a lot of people start to get into the Rift of Worlds and start to create these teams. Should they be able to, most of us just kind of jump in there and, it's like, oh, I'll start this raid and you guys join me, whatever, whatnot. Should we start to kind of look at, what kind of comps everybody has so that if we have a team that's generally more safer than others, they should be the ones to kind of start it up so they can be in the middle versus somebody else in case something bad happens? What do you think?
For sure. I actually think the person in the middle should be, first of all, a DS user, and second of all, they should have a really strong healer. If you know you're going to be double tanking, if you absolutely know you'll be double tanking, the person in the middle should have ideally a DS because you get skill 1 revenge heal block, which means when both heads attack you, you have more chance of landing heal block on revenge. And also a really strong healer, something like a Violent Miang that's really fast with high attack, like 2k plus attack, 200 speed Violent, or something like up 230 speed, 240 speed Praha, unless it's on double Nemesis, and then you could probably run a 200 speed Praha for that.
Okay.
At the bottom of the page, there's a skill called Destroyer's Revenge. So
Wow.
Destroyer's Revenge is actually the counter tick in the top left corner. So basically what it is it counts the amount of turns that your team takes before the boss moves, and it will do damage proportionate to how many turns you've taken. So if you've taken, like, let's say 30 turns, you're going to take a massive hit compared to, let's say, if you've taken 10 or 15 turns. Just to note, this counter does actually reset to 0 if you make the boss jump before it attacks you.
Right on. So looking at this this raid boss right now, I mean, obviously, as we've kind of watched through the first 3 episodes, we've been really methodical about the units that we use, the core units that we use in every aspect. And as we've worked our way into TOA and from TOA to Dragons, we have had some trend of units that we've been able to use in those previous stages. Now we're going to be starting to veer off into some of those units, but also incorporate more. Let's throw the blanket out right now. As far as units that are going to be picked, there's going to be some that are going to be really good and some bad. So why do you feel that certain units can be good or bad?
I actually have a really solid raid structure for starting raids and for moving into R5 that I always suggest people. We'll put it up. We'll put up a picture of this in the video. But basically, the first unit is always Colleen. Colleen is number 1, hands down the best free-to-play unit, and almost impossible to replace in raids. She brings a first skill heal block, first skill attack break, multiple hits for multiple chances, a second skill heal block, multiple hits, multiple chances, and a third skill max HP scaling heal that, or actually I don't think it's max HP scaling. I think it's percentage scaling.
Percentage, yeah.
And she also gives a 3-turn attack buff on a really low cooldown. So Colleen, although she is, I believe, a Nat 2 and has relatively low base stats, it feels like her kit is probably worth, in raid at least, is probably worthy of something like a Nat 4.5 to a Nat 5 because of the utility that she brings for your team.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say this is one of those situations in the game that really makes me excited about it because we got this when we come in games like this, we got this theory that, the higher the star, that essentially means the better. When in certain aspects of the game, there's just certain clutch units that really make a dramatic impact on it. And who would have thought that a game like this would find a balance between 2-star monsters, 4-star monsters, 5-star monsters, whatever it is. And so I'm really, big shout out to Comptos if you are listening there for really making a nice, well-rounded game when it comes to mix and matching some of these units that no one would have ever thought to build.
So the second slot would be Darien or Diaz. If you have a Diaz, you're lucky. Just consider yourself lucky because you have an upgraded version of Darien. So a lot of people talk about units with passives and they say, oh, this unit is a passive. It's going to be useless in raids. It's just going to get Oblivion and then it won't do anything. Darien is a unit that actually is non-passive reliant. So basically what that means is even if his passive wasn't there, he's still good. He has a good solid kit. So Darien's your frontline tank, basically. You have a chance to defense break on first skill, so you can revenge defense break. And then on your second skill, you have 2 chances to attack break on a low cooldown. He's also HP scaling on first skill, so if you have a decent amount of HP, you'll do still some relative damage.
Mm-hmm.
But the added benefit of having that passive is that everyone on your team takes 15% less damage. So like we talked about in the Giants video, the damage mitigation passive is actually extremely underrated and it's quite amazing.
Right. Right. And so, you were kind of mentioning Diaz versus Darien and whatnot. As you stated, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the rune builds and how we mix and match those runes, throughout the day. Just you particular, your personal opinion. If you were playing around with a particular composition that can be safe, but maybe you're like trying to add a little more DPS. Do you like utilizing a Darien that you have in your situation, or would you still prefer a Diaz?
Oh, I 100% would prefer a DS. Skill 1 heal block is unbelievable. Skill 1
Yeah.
heal block is possibly the best raid skill in the game. Having
Gotta have
something
it.
like a Thebe or even sometimes like an Amarna, those units are amazing. If you're blessed with something like a Jara where you can brand and heal block on the same skill, or a Nikki where you can cleanse and heal block, like having those kinds of niche units are just amazing. They're incomparable to everything else.
Gotcha. And which one's going to be the next one you want to hit up?
It's going to be a unit that it's going to be a damage dealer. It's going to be something that reduces attack bar and applies slow debuff or one of the other. So ideally you have Hua. Hua would be the best opportunity or the best and most consistent attack bar reducer that also slow debuffs. So first skill on Hua has the chance to land a slow debuff and it scales with speed. Second skill is just damage with a dot. But the nice thing is her passive has a chance to hit an extra turn and reduce the attack bar without actually taking an extra turn. So she has the chance to hit twice without taking an extra turn, which is really nice because 1, it's not going to add to the counter for buff strip stun, and 2, it's not going to add to the counter for extra damage.
Gotcha.
So there are other opportunities for things like here. Like if you have a light Kung Fu girl, that's a pretty solid position. She has a lot of attack bar reduction potential. You could use something like a Yen, although her passive does actually give her an extra turn. Units like Ran, but basically any unit similar to that is possible. If you absolutely don't have anything close to this and you don't think you'll be pulling anything close to this soon, the free-to-play version of these units would be the Dark Warbear. I believe his name is Gorgo. The
Yep.
Dark Warbear has attack bar reduction on every hit on his first skill hit, I believe, which is max HP scaling, and his third skill is an HP scaling nuke. And he's tanky. So it's not too hard to build him, even though he is a 2-star. You can build him pretty much with just a lot of HP and a decent amount of speed. But he won't be as comparable as something like a Hua or a Light Kung Fu Girl, for example.
Gotcha.
So the 4th slot, probably the most important slot in your entire party, is going to be your cleanser slot. So your cleanser is going to be the one that takes all the debuffs off your team. Ideally, sometimes you have cleanse. So there's different types of cleansers. There's aggressive cleansers and defensive cleansers. So for defensive cleansers, you have things like Ravidi, Konamiya, Annabelle. Well, no, not really Annabelle. And then you have the aggressive ones, which would be like your Annabelle, your Miang, your Lisa, maybe your Jamie too. But basically for a cleanser, what you're looking for is either high stats and low cooldowns or just really low cooldowns. So units like Konamiya is probably the most free-to-play option you can use for a cleanser. Very solid unit, very solid unit. Although it is slow, they have changed the AI for his research skill, as well as he does have a small heal on top of his cleanse, which makes him quite a safe unit. Ideally, Lisa is the best raid cleanser. She's aggressive. She does damage. She lowers cooldowns. She has glancing debuff. Her stats are really good, and she only requires 2 skill ups and 3rd skill to be at maximum effectiveness. People often ask what my ranking order is for cleansers. I think the best cleanser in the game is Lisa, or for raids at least, is Lisa, followed by Miang, followed by Annabelle, followed by Konamiya. I actually don't like units like Dona and units like Ravidi because I feel like they don't bring the same kind of survivability or damage to the team. Although I understand some people build it. Like I believe you have a Ravidi build, right?
I have a Ravita because I like to incorporate, like I said, like you were saying in another comp, you have or in the kind of your core units, you like to use a unit that's going to provide you that slow. Well, if I'm taking Hua to provide more damage for the team, and I'm bringing in something like a Stella, then have a Ravidi in there is pretty darn clutch because he's going to be my slower and he's going to be my attack bar manipulator here along with Stella. So if Hua's not in there, then I have 2 units to do that. That's why I really like the Ravidi, but his AI is good as well.
Yeah.
Now here, let me ask you this here, since we got on the topic of the cleansers or whatnot. You know, the cleansers. You know, we got them on a ranking system or whatnot. When you are ranking them, are we ranking them based, like you said, just offensive versus defensive? How about that AI of these? You know, how have you seen the AI evolve? We've had a couple units change. What do you like about the AI on Lisa versus others? It seems like Lisa's AI is just constantly going. Like if the skill's up, she's going for it. Whereas other units out there, their AI is a little bit smarter and can kind of come in
So
clutch.
to go over this, Lisa and Annabelle. Annabelle is built for damage. Her AI is built damage. She'll always use 3rd skill before heal. Therefore, she is not as good as Miang or as good at... Well, yeah, I would still say she's better than Konamiya. Konamiya is very safe and slow, but it's effective as a smart healer. With Lisa, the thing is, the reason her AI is built so that she'll use it right off cooldown is because it lowers cooldowns of all the skills that are of all the units that are pulled with her on her attack command, as well as it also does relevant damage. So every time it's up, it's up. It's just gonna get used. But I mean, her cooldowns aren't that low, and you run all your cleansers on violent anyways. They should be getting enough turns to just continually cleanse.
Gotcha. And I think we
I think
pretty
the
much
AI of Lisa is amazing. I think a lot of people criticize it, and I don't think it's right to criticize it. I think it's built exactly the way it should be built.
gotcha. And with regards to the rest of the units that you kind of mentioned, was there any other units that you wanted to throw in the mix as far as recommended kind of core units that you like to utilize for the Rift of Worlds?
Yeah, so your 5th slot would be your main leader skill unit or your secondary, depending on if you're using in that Hua slot, if you have like a Hua or a Yen or something like that, those have leader skills. But if you're using something like, a Ravidi, or if you use something like, what is it, a light Kung Fu Roll, they don't have as effective leader skills. Your main leader skill here could be something like if you want to use a Fire Panda, if you want to use Fire Monkey King, Wind Monkey King, if you want to use like Jemire, Sierra, you can really run whatever you want in this slot. Just you need a leader skill. You can run a Praha, you could run a Tessarian, you could run literally anything in this slot. I just think you need some sort of leader skill. You need to most effective teams have 2 leader skills or 1 really solid one. And I think this is the slot where you put that really solid leader skill in.
Gotcha. And regarding with the leader skills here to kind of add, if you had to do kind of the same ranking system that you did with the cleansers as far as the leader skills go for Rift of Worlds, how would you rank them and why?
Resistance, defense, crit rate, and then attack. I don't like speed at all. I dislike speed as a leader skill.
Gotcha. And it's kind of crazy because if you guys are new to the game or haven't been following with the Rose for quite some time, we really, the meta really kind of evolved on that. When we first started out, everybody was all about that speed. And then they kind of broke away and said, wow, you know what, this critical rate is something interesting. Like if we're all, have these, situations where our units are built around, in that 60 to 70, 70 to 80%, critical rate, if we can, essentially cap them out with that critical rate lead, we're inevitably doing more damage and getting it done quicker and so on and so forth. So it's kind of cool to see, initially we're like, oh, let's just make them all, faster and it's going to work. And we've been able to show, over the course of the time that you can reduce the time, in every run with other stuff other than actual raw speed. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, my opinions are going to be different from everyone else's, right? Like, I'm not going to have the same exact opinion as Shredded Puzzle or the same as, like, Varian, for example. But when it comes to my dislike of speed as a leader skill, the reason I don't like speed is because for a lot of people's raid teams, their units have, like, notable different base speeds. So if you have your raid team speed synced for a specific purpose, like you have your attack buff and then you have DPS or you have defense break right before that, that speed leader could mess up your turn order, which is frustrating, especially on that first quarter, because that first quarter you can make go by instantly if you have the right setup.
Gotcha. And with regards to the what was I going to say here? What do you call it? The harmful effects that you're going to put it on. Did you want to hit up with regards to how they kind of break away from head to head, or did you want to save that for later? Because that can kind of tie into what you're talking about right now too.
All right, I guess we could talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about that now. So there's 3 heads in raids in Rift of Worlds. So what you do is when you apply a debuff, it applies that amount of turns to all 3 heads. Mm-hmm. Right. So if I apply a defense break to my head, it applies to all 3 heads. But if I'm attack bar reducing my head and you're not attack bar reducing your head, that means that when your head takes a turn and moves the defense break down to 1 turn, I may still have my defense break at 2 turns. So when you apply the debuffs, they're spread across all 3. But as they lower themselves, they're separate for each head.
Gotcha. That's really interesting because, most of us are just, when we first came on board, we're just like, just put as much defense as you can and just, it doesn't matter. Just put it on and we're good.
That's why the initial raid meta was to just run a lot of Violent Revenge until people realized that Violent was actually the reason they were getting killed. So I actually talked about this with one of my viewers. Apparently in Korea, the meta is very still running Violent on most of your raid units. Your raid units are Violent Revenge. But something that we've learned here, and I've talked about this a lot with different top players, like Malicious, for example, Malicious85, players like Where's My Praha, etc. Just a lot of High Guardian players that I raid with consistently, is that it's actually more effective to run less violent units because there's less RNG involved.
Good point. I like it. And I can agree with you more. Initially, I was part of that trend to start out with a lot of violent, and then I met a variety of people, to include actually some of the people that you mentioned, in addition to Kazuto 111, former Educate and Dominate guest, that also kind of talked about how to improve.
A raid god.
He is a raid god. He's a pimp. Pimping ain't easy. Shout out to Kazuto one time. My man. So, yeah, I've learned a lot over the course of my time, and it's been kind of cool to see my team evolve because we get so, set in our ways, and then, every once in a while somebody puts out an idea, and then it, play around with it, and it works out pretty good. So I like it. I'm trying to think here. With regards to the compositions and talking about the uses of frontline and backline and the stats and whatnot, that has to be one of the most aggravating things we had to deal with when we first started out, trying to say what is optimal, how much defense should you have, how much hit points you should have. This Rift of Worlds has been out for quite some time now, and of course a lot of stuff has gotten outdated. In your eyes right now, for the mid-game player coming into that R4, what do you think they should focus on with regards to stats?
Frontline stats, if you're starting with 2-man frontline, my suggestion is to run 25k HP, 1.5k defense. Those are pretty low minimums in my opinion. You can run higher on either. Let's say you're running a Fire Panda, you could run 2k defense with 20k HP. But once you start adding more units, you can run up to like a 4-man defense of like 20k HP, 1k defense-ish. But basically, the key requirement I would say on frontliners is if you have a skill that can debuff the boss, I would put Revenge, at least 1 Revenge set. Ideally, certain units are going to run more than 1 Revenge, but you can choose to go, the way you renew units, you can choose to go more sets or more stats. So you can run one Revenge, 2 Revenge, 3 Revenge, or you can run, Revenge, Energy, Guard, and get more stats out of it.
Right.
But units, if you're going to run a cleanser frontline, I actually don't recommend putting it on violent. I recommend going, or sorry, don't recommend putting it on revenge. I would go violent broken with whatever gives you the best stats. And the reason being is because if you're running a frontliner on violent, you're forcing 4 runes on it that have to be there. So likely you're not going to get as many stats out of the entire rune build as you would if you were running, let's say, single revenge with energy and endure.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point there. I like that.
So if you take a look at my Lisa versus my Colleen, that's a really strong example of it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
My Lisa's violent broken, I believe, on speed HP defense. And my Colleen is revenge, energy, endure on speed HP defense as well.
Yeah, Colleen with some of the best rooms you got here. Pretty solid stats.
My frontliners, Colleen and Darian, have my 2 best sets of tank runes.
Yeah, buddy.
Would never give them up because those runes are never changing. They're just good.
Now, with regards to those recommendations, how did they vary going into R4 from R4 to R5?
So R4, my suggestion, you can probably drop about 20 to 25% less HP in defense.
Gotcha. Cool.
And the reason I say that is because R4 is not nearly as difficult as R5. A lot of people have that struggle jumping between 3 and 4 and then 4 and 5. I think the real struggle is actually jumping between 4 and 5 because a lot of people overestimate their runes or either underestimate how strong R5 is and end up wiping.
Gotcha. Now, let me ask you this: when people are going to be playing around with their runes, we're gonna try to hit some stats, but every so often you see a couple people that play around with different rule builds that with regards to the recommendations you gave us, they changed it a little bit in a certain way, and because of their runes or whatnot, they can essentially they can use that kind of support base unit to provide a little bit more DPS. So let me give an example. Darian, right? You're a big advocate of utilizing the revenge set. We may make an argument for a certain amount of defense, certain amount of HP, but because of the fact that his first go, right, is based on his max HP, could we make an argument if we can, work on those double revenge? You know exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
This is definitely not a starting rate thing, but you can, when you reach the point where you've reached all your minimum stats and you're starting to try to min-max for damage, you can run crit rate or attack on different units. So unit like Darian, you could try to run HP crit rate defense or crit damage, depending if you get the right stats. Units like Lisa, like Foi is probably the one who first brought this out, but running speed attack defense or speed attack HP due to her high HP. But yeah, it's not too common for people to do it. A really good example would actually be is if you guys have ever seen Malicious's Diaz. He used to run it Vampire Revenge on defense crit damage attack, but now he runs it on Fight Revenge something. Fight Revenge Blade, I think, on attack crit damage attack.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it crits for about 10k, I believe, on second skill. But it's pretty solid. Yeah, you can definitely min-max damage on your units. I would not suggest doing it if you're in R4, and I would most definitely not suggest doing it when you're starting to get into R5. You really should only do this when your runes are quite decent quality and grinded well. Even I'm not at the point where I would consider making those kind of risks. I don't want to ruin my raid team. Definitely don't do those things mid-month. If you're going to try them out on Rune Removal Day.
Gotcha. And with regards to the raw specs in the aspect of resistance versus accuracy, what do you like on your recommendations for units across the board?
59%.
59%.
A Nat 5 leader skill of resistance will give you 41%, and a Nat 4 will give you 30%. I believe that 9% difference, or that 11% difference, is actually pretty negligible. I don't think it's ever really necessary for you to have that. I think the resistance is most important on your frontliners that will be revenging, as well as your cleansers and your healers. I think those are the units that you should absolutely have the resistance on. I know my Praha is a very bad example of that because I run lower resistance on my Praha. But my Praha is more PvP focused more than raid focused. She's on double Nemesis will right now.
Now, I'll be real with you. I just put Praha on because we were talking about resistance. I didn't even realize how your resistance was. So that's funny that you actually pointed it out there.
A lot of her runes need more enchants and grinds. I haven't worked on too many of them. A lot of the slots are completely replaceable. The only slot really worth mention is probably the slot 1 and the slot 6.
Yep. Really, really solid. I like him.
But yeah, for accuracy requirements, a lot of people have said different things, and I still don't know what is the absolute best. But from my experience rating with people like Where's My Prahawk, Corrosive, um, Malicious, Pioneer Summoner, or I guess his name is Oncilla in game.
Yep.
But we found 25 to 30% to be extremely effective on skills that have a 100% activation rate. So activation rate is harmful effect rate, guys, if you didn't know. But yeah, so I run about 30% on most of my units. I think it's pretty solid. It works out pretty well. My attackers, I'm not too focused on accuracy. I try to get 30% if I can, but it's never a focus. So for my team, I use Praha, Darian, Colleen, Lisa, Hua, and Stella. Those are my standard units. I've
Gotcha.
actually been using this team for a long time, and I haven't really changed it too much besides their runes. But this is a solid team because it fits that basic rate structure I gave everyone. You can do it with basic runes. You can move up. You can continually get better and better.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And speaking about that rune aspect, for those that have been following the game as of recent, we had that new incorporation of some of the runes out there providing group bonuses out there. We've definitely seen the meta change when it comes to the PvP side, playing around with those fight runes to incorporate a little bit more attack power. What's your take on those runes that provide those defensive stats? Do you think they can be viable on the Rift of Worlds, or should the
I
people
think they
just be...
can all be viable in Rift of Worlds, but the thing is that elemental raids are so endgame for most players. The
Right.
cost to, farm those and make those runes are really, really high. So I wouldn't actually suggest most people to even consider them until you're starting to really, really min-max your damage, trying to go for those sub 2-minute R5 runs.
Gotcha.
I
And
don't
it's... No, I was going to say, talking about, once you get that consistent team like you've mentioned, that we definitely have to kind of mix and match, make some changes so that we can, constantly improve and increase or reduce the speed that we can clear it. In your opinion, when should you start swapping units for different ones, like in order to improve your speed?
So I think when you can start using different units, like adding a third damage dealer or even a fourth damage dealer or, adding a Miang, I think those things really come when you're starting to work towards speed R5s after you have a really solid rune inventory. Like you've farmed a lot of really solid runes and you're ready to really start moving towards those kinds of things. Um, it's probably a few months after you've started doing R5. Realistically, it depends on how many crystal refreshes you do, of course, but what it comes down to is it comes down to having solid runes and having all of your runes grinded. Like if your runes aren't grinded, you're really not going to be doing much in R5. Another really important thing to note with moving between R4 and R5, guys, is that if you're doing R4 with non plus 15 runes, you're going to struggle a lot. Those extra 12, 13% stats or like 12 speed, like those are extremely important in R5.
Gotcha.
R5 is purely stats. R4 is composition with a little bit of runes. R5 is the same composition with way better stats. That's all it comes
Gotcha.
down to.
And kind of going on that topic where we're hitting it up this R4 R5 or whatnot, we're gonna have a couple people listening to you today that are newer to the game or whatnot. Maybe they caught this on from a previous series or whatnot, and they are kind of curious on the topic of when to kind of get involved when it comes to Rift of Worlds. A lot of people have been mentioning it's not valuable until you get to R4 R5, and some people are like, oh, let's just farm R1, R2, whatever. What's your take on that? When should people start really getting involved in that?
I think progression-wise, you can, after you start doing dragons for about a month probably, you can choose to work towards TOA hard 70/80, or you can start working towards raid 4. The reason I say raid 4 is because raid 4 is when green grinds and enchants stop dropping. The reason I don't like them is because one, with the amount of stats that they actually give, they're actually a detriment to your mana. They cost a lot to use and you're using a lot of energy to get them. Totally not worth. Therefore, our farming R4 or higher, it would be worth it because that's when you start getting only blue and better.
Gotcha. We've mentioned a couple units that have been core, some units that people have stuck with for quite some time, but ever so often you get an opportunity to theory crop with a variety of people and trying out new combos, new methods, new units. If you had an underrated and overlooked unit that you wanted to mention it, like the number one you think that people just overlook completely, what would that be and why? What do you think?
Um, I think the number one underrated unit, that's kind of difficult. I think it's actually going to be Colleen and Konamiya. because a lot of people look at them and go, these units have really bad base stats, but Konamiya is still a really strong cleansing healer. He has a really, really low cooldown for it's a 3-turn cleanse that gives you like an 18% heal, and it can research. It used to be able to research itself, which was even better because it gave the cleanser more turns, which I don't know why people complain so much about. That didn't really make sense to me. But I mean, it's a unit that gets a lot of turns and it cleanses a lot and it always heals. It's a smart cleanser. I mean, the stats really aren't the worst. It has a good amount of HP. It is a little slow, but it's pretty strong. And then Colleen, people don't realize like how amazing that kid is. That kid is incomparable.
Yep.
You have a 3-turn attack buff on a 3-turn cooldown. You have a heal block with 2 chances on a 3-turn cooldown, and then you have a multi-hit attack break on first skill on a 75% chance.
Yep.
Or a 70% chance. Like, those are amazing skills. These kits are unbelievable.
Yep. And this is one of those units that kind of, have you seen the first 3 episodes? You know, we got certain units that we've started out with in the first episode, and then they've slowly and steadily worked their way into different aspects of the game. We're going to be talking about in a future episode, episode 5, Necropolis B10, how a unit like this can also be utilized in that particular aspect, one of the key units in that. So stay tuned for that. When it comes to the Rift of Worlds, as I love to ask my guests, you know, there's a lot of things that we've seen change.
Can I say one more thing about the underrated units? Do you mind?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Miang. I think Miang is extremely underrated as well. A lot of people don't think Miang can be used without skill ups. Miang is amazing without skill ups. She works just fine. I mean, I haven't built mine yet, but I have a lot of people that ran theirs without skill ups for a long time. It's very good. Miang is a unit that scales on runes. She doesn't really necessarily need the skill ups, but they're just nice, right? You're not going to run Miang as a solo cleanser. You're going to run her as a secondary cleanser healer to make a safety slot and also get a little more damage and debuffs. You know?
I'm really glad you mentioned Miang, because that has been like a clutch unit for me when I'm running my safe team in the middle for the R5 carries for the teams. I don't know what it is, but apparently even though I have like max, like I'll have like, you know, high resistance for the majority of my units, when I get hit with that Rage for War and everybody gets stunned, I swear Miang always she always resists that stun, and then she always uses her 3rd skill, Dancing Mirage. I swear, man, it's like the perfect time. Like,
it's good. I mean, it heals for tons, dude. If you have 2k attack, it heals for like 16k almost.
It's crazy. I got a gentleman by the name of Bad Hands, Epic Fail Delta member. He recently just put out a video doing some testing from one of the hyped up units that recently had a change there, the light Drunken Master versus this one, and it's unanimous that Miang, what it provides to the mix as far as just the heals.
It's not even close. I had a few friends test it for me as well, including Vindicated _, also known as the abusive Reddit mod.
There it is. Abusive. Get out there. So
sorry, you had a question about something?
Yeah. So you know, with all the guests that we have on board, you know, we'd love to, since we do have Come To Us, do check out our videos every now and again, and we Come To Us has shown over the course of the time that they do listen to our insight and see how we can improve the game to be better for the community. If you had one thing to change about the Rift of Worlds as it is today, what would it be and why?
Actually, this is something I discussed with Fwa over the recent balance patching notes. We were discussing about Rift, how we would like Rift to be split into 2 different things. So when you get a Rift drop, I want it to be a little bit more like a Kairos drop, where you get mana and then a drop. You know, you get a mana and a rune, or mana and a Rainbow Mon. Whereas in Rift, you know, you get one. You get one. It could be mana, could be a grind, could be an enchant, could be a Rainbow Mon. That's really frustrating for us because there's more incentive to farm Necro because we need the mana. Like, this game is so mana hungry, especially after the creation of crafting runes. You know, 50,000 to craft a rune. If I'm crafting 50 runes, it's 2.5 mil. Like, right there. That's gone. That's like, for a lot of people, that's a lot of mana.
That is, yeah.
I mean, I can farm 4 or 5 million mana in a day, but like, a lot of people don't have those kinds of resources or time. So when it comes to doing Rift, you know, I think Rift needs to be more rewarding on the mana. It needs to be a mana split plus some sort of drop. Whether that drop remains on the same pool, whether it's a Grindstone, Enchant, Rainbow Mon, or Shape-Shifting Stones. I also think they should take out Summoning Stones. Just overall, 2 Summoning Stones or 3 Summoning Stones is actually probably the worst drop you can ever get in anything.
No.
The reason being is because when you compare like its mana cost to anything else in the game, it is obscene. It's like probably 12 times worse than anything else.
No. I can't believe they haven't had any more different kind of events or something of the sort to like even get more stones in. I mean, I think it took me I don't know about you, but as a person that's not like, I mean, we're grinding it out, but I mean, I think it took months, like 6 months or 8 months for some people out there that I know that didn't get their first 100 so they can get like the
Were you talking about transmog stones? I was talking about summoning stones.
oh, something. So I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about transmog.
So
I got
I'm
you.
actually pretty okay with transmog stones. I've collected over
Gotcha.
370 in
Gotcha.
7 months.
Yeah, well, you know what, Comptos? You need to change that too. Change them all. You know what I'm saying?
Increase the drop rate.
Yeah, just change it all, man. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. Now, here's something else that's going to kind of hit the ball on some of the people that have been listening here. You know, when we think about the Rift of Worlds, looking at it, whatnot, this episode was focused on that middle one here right now, the raid boss. There's somebody that's going to ask a question down below, even though they said they watched the video, whatnot. There's still somebody that's like, dude, what the heck? You didn't even talk about the other 5, Rifter Beast ones. Why is this one that we're focusing on today so much more important than the other 5 beasts?
None of them increase your runes. They're all very materialistic based, very specific to either a homunculus build or new rune crafting. That's all they're for.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good thing to point out, guys, because again, like we've kind of stated, with regards to the 5 raid bosses, yes, you can make that homunculus, yes, you can build it in certain ways and be creative and so on and so forth, but the ability to improve those high-end runes that you have to grind it out and enchant them, that's going to help you out so much as you progress into the mid to late stages of the game. So it's extremely important to kind of follow the path that Once the Left has laid out for us. You know, get your setup here, get your raid team going, get those rooms, farmed out, grind it out, so you can really, really improve your progression here. So really good stuff here. That's pretty much all I got for you when it comes to this Rift of World episode. Is there anything else you wanted to add, my man?
So I guess just a quick conclusion here, guys. Basically, we'll post up the raid structure. You can take a look at that. Always remember, you don't absolutely need sets on your attackers. Stats are the most important things. Overall, everything in the video is pretty accurate. If you guys have any questions, you can always contact me, or, you can contact Childish. We have lots of different ways. You can contact me through my Discord, my Twitter, my Twitch page. And I believe for you, it's your Twitch page. I think you also have a Twitter, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah, and on your YouTube. But, you guys have any questions, we will always be looking through the comments to try to give you guys the best insight that we can.
Right on.
And I know there's going to be someone right now who's going to be like, man, I don't know what to do to fix, to make my raid team faster. I'm looking for some extra units. My 2 suggestions, Shaolin as a damage dealer on Vampire Frontline, and Wind Homunculus. I'm just going to put those out there right now because I know there's people that are going to ask.
But hold on a second, Once. You just told us to stay away from those other things. How are we going to make our Wind Homunculus if we're focused on Rift of Worlds, huh?
Hey, those are for way later game players.
I got you. Those
are because there's always somebody who asks something that
there is always somebody who
we're
asks.
not. I mean, it is cool. It's cool. People want answers. We'll give them answers.
We gotta give it to them, man. We gotta give it to them. All right. Well, that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this episode number 4 of the 5-part mini-series Operation Midgame. Stay tuned, as next week we'll be bringing on board the 5th and final episode, focusing on that Necropolis dungeon and everything to do about it. All right. So that is it. I am done. It's your boy Childish, and Once in Love with ChildishPlays checking out. Take care, and we'll see you guys next week in that 5th episode of Operation Midgame. I'm out.